Hello, and welcome to the Liquidity Event. We're your hosts, AJ.
Y yo soy Shane.
This is episode 76, being recorded on Monday, January 9th, airing on Friday. Ooh, Friday the 13th. Can't wait for that. This week, we've got an auspicious day. We've got a fabulous and slightly spooky show for you today. We've got cybersecurity, more tech layoffs, unfortunately, living in luxury on the high seas. Shane, I have a request for commentary from you on that one. And, of course, discussion of our annual company retreat, which we are having right now in beautiful, sunny Los Angeles, California. Just kidding. It's gross and rainy outside in Los Angeles, California. ¿Qué pasó, Papa Azúcar?
Bienvenido a Seattle, apparently. It is disgusting out here. I was promised sunshine when we planned this trip.
I know. I feel like I've personally let everyone down by bringing our crew out here. And
you would feel that way. Everything's AJ's
and now
fault.
It's raining.
Everybody stoke the flames of AJ's anxiety and tell her it's her fault that it's raining.
Too late. Retreat will be over by the time this podcast airs. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we actually have some breaking news in the equity in the liquidity event space. I got an email about 30 seconds ago. Sorry, Shane, I just popped this right in here. I just wanted to make sure we cover it because it is so urgent that Mattress Firm, an IPO of a company that filed their S1, I think it was back in October, was planning to go public in Q1. They were trying to raise about $500 million, and they have just withdrawn their IPO. So I wonder, I haven't had a chance to dig into that. Maybe we'll look into that next week. But just wanted to share that breaking news with our audience.
Yeah, thank you for not sleeping on that highlight. I really appreciate inserting that soft landing here. It doesn't make me comfortable to hear that the Mattress Firm will not be more liquid and have more opportunities.
Do you think you're going to lose sleep over it?
There it is. I don't care. I just want the IPO market to get back to normal. Not necessarily 2021 highlights the halcyon days of 2021, but just back to normal.
Yeah, for sure. That's
not how that word works, but you know what I mean.
Halcyon? How do you spell halcyon? Halcyon?
You nailed it. Look at you.
I always pronounced hard C, but oh well. That makes me an idiot.
Halcyon?
Halcyon? No?
I think it's the halcyon days, but you never make fun of somebody that mispronounces a word because it means that they learned the word from reading it.
Yeah. I don't ever make. I'm a bad pronouncer. Speaking of bad pronouncers, what are you most looking forward to this week in Los Angeles with the whole BKFi team?
I'm just looking forward to. We just met one of our employees for the first time in person. That's always a jarring but awesome experience to put a face to a Zoom name and presence. And I'm looking forward to doing that with about 7 to 8 other people, I believe, that I've never met in person before.
Yeah. Immediately shocking. Immediately. The height is always the first shocker.
Yeah, Bobby's quite tall.
Yeah. Hey, Bobby. How you doing?
Yeah, Bobby handles the podcast for us, dear listener. And yeah, it's just a lot more trust. You know, we work in very stressful situations during tax season and year-end planning season, and just throughout the year as well. So it is always much more helpful. And we work very interdepartmentally. We have all our different divisions. So it's great to know that while someone might not be a tax manager or a financial planner, like they don't have the same background as you, at least you've met them in person and you know that they've got your back and they're helping everyone row in the same direction. These, especially if you've seen someone karaoke a Disney song on 3 or 4 tequila shots, you know that you get to build a little bit better of a bond than playing virtual bingo or whatever it is.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I am most looking forward to karaoke. That has become a Brooklyn FI retreat tradition as of last retreat. That is what I am most excited about. We always do it the last night because it can get a little. Want to make sure that there's no tax season planning or anything that has to happen after a night of karaoke. Just McDonald's breakfast sandwiches and flights home. I think at our last retreat after karaoke, we were going to the Japanese botanical garden, which ended up being lovely. But attendance on that went from mandatory to optional, considering how fun karaoke was the previous evening.
Indeed. How were your holidays, AJ? Have you guys spoken about this on the podcast already? I missed this. How was your New Year's Eve?
I know, Shane, we've missed you. Yeah. My New Year's Eve was fantastic. I spent it with a 6-week-old puppy and some great friends in the desert. How was your New Year's Eve?
I was asleep by about 10 o'clock, I think. I'm not a big New Year's Eve fan. I don't know. I think I like it. I like the way you did it out in the desert, just far away from the shenanigans. But then again, that's mid-30s piping in here.
Yeah, I love New Year's Eve, but my definition of a perfect New Year's Eve is like fancy dinner that you cook at home with a good bottle of wine or two and like toast. And then in the desert, we call it desert midnight, which is 9 o'clock, which means after 9 o'clock, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, I just stayed with you at your house in Palm Springs, and 9 o'clock was y'all's version of midnight. I thought that was very cute.
Good night.
Dear listener, AJ Ayers goes to bed at around 8:30. Wakes up around 3:30, apparently, in case you're wondering when you can get a hold of her, Eastern to Pacific.
All my New York friends are like, where are you? Why are you texting me at 4 o'clock in the morning, you psycho? Anyway, teach their own.
It is pretty psychotic.
I adjust to time zones. I had a good Indeed segue, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about our New Year's Eve. So speaking of bad hangovers, Salesforce is cutting 10% of its personnel. That is about 7,000 employees. We've got an article here from CNBC. They're reducing their office space as well. They're chalking this up to a restructuring plan. They just announced it last week. They currently employ over almost 80,000 workers as of December. So they're cutting about 10% of that workforce. And basically, the rationale here is customers have been more measured in their purchasing decisions, given the inflation, stock market where it is, just a general macroeconomic client. So they have made a very difficult decision. Those are CEO Mark Benioff's words, to lay off workers here.
Co-CEO.
Co-CEO. I'm sorry. Co-CEO Benioff. Earnings. Yeah. I mean, earnings in Q4 were great for them. So this is very much a preemptive measure saying they're looking at the forecast. They're talking to their experts. They're talking to their finance team. And we're saying, we got to figure out a way to keep up this profit without having, we overhired. That's what it is. It's an admission that we expanded quickly and to shore up ahead of a potential recession, have to make some cuts. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to let people go. And the people that were making the hiring decisions and the executives at all these tech firms, there's always the war for talent. They were gearing up for a longer... I mean, who could have predicted the vaccines would come out so fast, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that is the miracle of science behind the vaccines can almost be blamed for all these layoffs because people thought, I mean, isn't that a crazy way to think about it? Like, we didn't know that we'd be able to get back to work. And like the pandemic darlings like Peloton and Zoom and all these other companies whose valuations exploded at the beginning of the pandemic and in the midst of the pandemic, who would have thought we'd be not wearing masks just 18 months, 2 years later, world travel's open, Japan's back open, et cetera. So I'm not saying, obviously that vaccines are terrible, but we couldn't predict that we would be able to get back to a normal or semi-normal or post-pandemic 2.0 this fast. So these companies that overhired thinking that we'd be continuing to expand into the digital space now have to cut back, including Amazon, Meta, Twitter. Say what you will about the Twitter layoffs, et cetera. And then the other thing I thought was interesting was Mark was saying that he'd be more measured about acquisitions. And these 10,000 employees means 8,000 employees means they would take a $1 billion hit to the P&L, I'm assuming for severance packages. Interesting that Salesforce acquired Slack in the midst of the pandemic, December 2020, for $27 billion. So that's about, 27 times the expense size as these 8,000 employees. So maybe that's what he's trying to say. I imagine people at Salesforce were like, why the fuck do we buy Slack? And now we're laying off 10% of our workforce, having a pity party about that. And they also purchased...
So you think they overpaid for Slack? You think the valuation was driven up?
I'm not an evaluation expert, but sure, that seems to be the peak of the at least public equity valuations for companies. And that's why everyone rushed to
December
IPO
2020.
in 2021. Yeah, surely Salesforce's valuation would be lower than it was in December of 2020, given the shift to fully digital, work from home, the necessity for Slack to replace the walking around the office. Do you think the same way?
I think so. I think the coming out and saying you're going to be more measured about acquisitions is an indicator that you are probably wanting to go back to your core business and that you just need to get lean and make it through whatever's coming. It's not like, hey, we need to grow. There's something missing from our product, or we want to increase our market share. Saying we're going to be measured about acquisitions means, well, we got to make this work with what we have, right? I think the Slack acquisition was a great move personally. Who else could you see Salesforce acquiring at this point? Like, I don't know, some tool we haven't heard of that like tracks customer mesh. Like, to me, it's all about like reporting at this point. So I'm sure there's a lot of startups that we've never heard of that have figured out some kind of like incredible metrics for reporting that Salesforce has their eye on. That would be my prediction for who their next acquisition would be.
Oh, definitely a decentralized AI, machine learning, neural network, VR, metaverse platform.
You forgot crypto. You forgot crypto in your adjectives.
I said decentralized. Sorry, I got to slip in a blockchain.
You forgot the FI after your
NFT. Yeah, my bad. Might be. No, I don't know enough about Salesforce's core business. I just know it's impossible to use for a small business.
Have demoed, will not be purchasing.
I thought I had my own little journey down Salesforce lane in 2018 or 19. It was like, this ain't going to work for us. What? Maybe in 2030, we'll join the Benioff team.
I feel like this is how I feel about Salesforce. I was like, I see where this is going and I see how this could be great, but I'm not an octopus. Like, it feels like you need like 8 arms to be able to use Salesforce and like understand how it works, but I only have 2. Like, if I had 8 arms, it would be amazing. But I don't have that, and I don't know how to add them to everybody.
I would love if somebody
who's the villain?
Tom Cruise in Minority Report.
That or Alfred Molina as the villain in Spider-Man, and like the one with Tobey Maguire. What's that character with all the legs, like the robot arms? Octoman. Octobad.
It's so funny. I was just watching on a flight Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and the Lost Ark, whatever it is. And that guy is his buddy at the beginning when he steals the sculpture.
Molina?
Yeah, and he, like, you remember the big iconic, like, rolling ball to get out of the temple at the beginning? Molina steals the statue from him. I'm like, I know this guy. He was from Harrison Ford. He's like a young Molina, like in his early 20s. It's like, it's cute.
I love Alfred Molina. Wait, was he just, I think he was just Diego Rivera in Frida.
Frida, yeah.
I like that movie. I feel like people didn't like it, and I just missed it, and I just watched it on a plane. I enjoyed it very much.
Oh, you're doing your Mexican homework, too. I also am doing my Mexican homework, considering I live in Mexico City now. And I didn't know anything about Frida Kahlo at all until I watched.
Oh, really?
I guess I have to watch Selma Hayek for 2 hours.
Oh, poor you. No, she did there was an exhibit of hers at the Brooklyn Museum, like pre-Pando, 3 years ago. That was pretty cool. So I got to see, they not only had like a lot of her paintings, but like a lot of her outfits, like, and obviously visiting Azucar, isn't it called Azucar? Or no, Azul. Sorry, I'm mixing up my Spanish words.
Casa Azul. Yeah, her house and studio in Mexico City. Yeah, it's really cool. Let's get back on track here. Enough south of the border talk. We have some more layoffs. Surprise, surprise. Mm-hmm. Let's get the layoffs out of the way, then we can talk about non-competes. Amazon is also expanding its corporate layoffs to an additional 18,000 jobs, as per the New York Times. I don't know. Do you have commentary here?
I don't. I guess my commentary is that they are corporate. Like, these layoffs are at the corporate level. These are not warehouse workers. Like Amazon, the logistics side of the business is actually hiring, and they're adding to that because we are all addicted to ordering things that show up within 2 days at this point. So these are more, there's a lot of engineers being laid off. I think there's a lot of sales team, some of the, Amazon studios, like a lot of the production side of things. I think that's unfortunately where a lot of layoffs have happened. That's all I have to say about that. I think we can move on. So speaking of being laid off, if you've got a non-compete contract, that might make getting a new job a little bit difficult. So
Nice
we have an
segue.
article here from the New York Times. U.S. moves to bar non-compete agreements in labor contracts. I read this article with great interest, and I still don't know how I feel about it. But essentially, there's a proposal from the Department of Labor to basically do away with non-compete agreements. There's a bunch of data that says the agreements actually they harm productivity and they actually lead to lower salaries, especially for mid-level employees who aren't able to. They feel like they cannot leave their job, and typically the way in the beginning of your career, the way that you level up your salaries is to move around and get promotions and convince the next firm that you should have a different title and move up on the career ladder. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, couple thoughts. First of all, this is the first constructive thing I've seen from the FTC under the Biden administration. I haven't seen any other antitrust stuff. I guess the potential stopping of the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard could help out with competition in the video game industry. But I haven't seen, I was like Googling other accomplishments of the past 2-3 years. Couldn't find anything. Unless I'm wrong, a reader or a listener can feel free to share additional things with me. And the other thing is, like, this is an actually really cool policy, I think. This is one of those policy decisions that I never thought about that might have a big impact. And like, you just take it for granted that non-competes are legal and that they can be enforceable. And non-competes do exist in our industry. We all know people that have signed non-competes in addition to non-disclosures and all that. It'd be wild if they made non-disclosure agreements illegal. But non-competes, I don't know if they're constitutional or if they have the authority to make these illegal. But it makes sense that if you are barred from practicing, that your compensation is going to be harmed because you can't do your job. And this seems to just cut down. It only seems to help businesses and like entrenched businesses that have a foothold in the market that are trying to fend off. We're going to see other policy decisions that support big businesses as well later on in the episode. But not unsurprisingly, the lobbyists at big businesses have been able to keep these non-competes around, and the pro-business community has enjoyed the legality of these non-competes. And I wonder how many other policies like this, like we hear about policy wonks like Elizabeth, not Holmes, who's the Massachusetts senator.
Warren.
Elizabeth Warren seems like somebody that has thought about this policy for decades. And I just wonder how many other like really cool policies are living under a rock or in some think tank somewhere that rarely get to see the light of day because we have to make 16 attempts to elect a speaker of the House.
Elect a speaker.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, or argue about something that's in the Bible. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, sure.
So what's interesting? What this is like kind of a rabbit hole, but I'm fascinated by this. There was a Supreme Court of Hawaii case which actually banned non-competes in the state of Hawaii, which is interesting because like deep in the filing cabinet of my brain, I was like, oh, I feel like I know about this because there was a Planet Money episode about non-competes, a guy who worked at Microsoft in Hawaii, but the Hawaii Supreme Court case is actually a different case. It has to do with a real estate agent who worked for some group and then started her own firm, and she actually won. So non-competes are actually non-enforceable in the state of Hawaii.
Seems like Hawaii would be one of the most important places to not enforce non-competes. It's not like you can just
small pond.
Yeah. I'll go work in LA. It's just a 6-hour flight,
Yeah. It's what are you gonna do? Swim? I don't like. I mean, the point of this article is if we get rid of enforceability of non-competes, like especially for people who are, the article uses the example of like, if you're one of the 25 people in the world who knows the secret formula to Coca-Cola, like, yeah, fine. You should sign a non-compete to not go work at Pepsi. Like, fair enough. But if you're someone who's designing merch for the Super Bowl at Coca-Cola, like, should you be barred from ever working in soft drinks again? Like, no, that's your resume. You've worked at a company like this. So I think hopefully there's smart enough people in government who can craft policies that actually end up helping regular people, but probably have to have some carve-outs in order to get this thing passed. We can't just have a blanket rule that applies to everyone. Otherwise, it's won't have any legs, won't go nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize that these non-competes, in the article, the New York Times article, says they apply to everyone from sandwich makers to hairstylists to doctors and software engineers. I was only really familiar with the software engineers one. Anyone that has, company secrets or could start a immediate rivalry. A sandwich makers, what kind of company secrets?
I mean, that oil and vinegar ratio, if you get that right, that is priceless. So I agree with that one. I'm just kidding. I don't agree with that. The hairstylist one is wacky. Can you imagine being a hairstylist and signing a non-compete? Like, what? That's your Like, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know. Speaking of leaked secrets, though, we do have another New York Times article about a breach at LastPass that has password lessons for us all. Apparently, the one password storage cloud storage company experienced a leak over the break. I feel bad about this one, considering we obviously use LastPass at BrooklynFi, but we also encourage all of our users or all of our clients to also use a password manager. I still think that password management or using a password manager of this type is way better than using just your memorized passwords, because you're looking at two different centralized databases of passwords, one being you using the same one over and over again, and another one being well encrypted various passwords that are centralized at, in the cloud. Some details on the hack. I think you've got some juicy details on how it went down.
Do I ever? Yeah. So it was taken from an employee's keychain. So we can either we can hazard a guess that it was either theft or intentional, meaning someone made a pretty penny off of selling this data. But it's not that.
Oh yeah, didn't think about that.
Yeah. Right.
That's
I'm
probably worth tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah. What I mean, look, the breach was there's a ton of opinion pieces that I've read some of floating around there. At the end of the day, like the data that was leaked, like there was still an encrypted master password that they likely did not get their hands on. So it is unlikely that your LastPass vault was exposed and they stole your Gmail password. Just that the fact that they were able to get in is what is scary and gives me pause to trust cybersecurity. I don't know. I feel like there's this, obviously with like ChatGPT in the news so much, like AI and robotics, and like it feels like that's so much sexier than cybersecurity. So like, my question is cybersecurity not getting enough investment and thought leadership because it's just not as sexy as like AI? Sort of like the way like taxes. Like taxes are not sexy. Mm-hmm. Like investment banking is sexy, but investment banking can't exist without taxes and like understanding the law. So like, I don't know. It's like
infrastructure. It's like things that are necessary and things that have to be done. People feel like, oh, if I have to do this, it's just an expense that I'm required to pay. I'm just going to try to get this expense down as low as possible and try to think about it as little as possible. And unfortunately, it's not very sexy to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, yeah, I remember back in the day when you had to remember all your passwords. Like, yeah, I mean, the safest thing to do is to remember 16 different 22-character passwords, which is impossible.
I have hundreds of passwords, yes.
It's impasswordable.
Thank you. You sent out the newsletter, or Bobby sent out the newsletter today or yesterday. My uncle called me. He works in cybersecurity. And he just immediately invited. He's like, "Oh, you want to get serious about password security?" He's like, "Come to DEF CON with me in Vegas in August. We're going to go to the hacker conference, DEF CON 32." I was like,
definitely
Mark, I'm not sure if I want to go to Vegas in August for a
with the cybersecurity community.
He said it's sick though, and he knows me pretty well. So maybe catch me in the desert in the weird version of Burning Man. Yeah.
Amazing.
You want to end on a high note?
Oh, speaking of, I was going to say, you want to end on the high seas? Okay, so a little bit of background here. So Shane, last week, John and I were talking about, there's this article that was like, clickbaity 28-year-old guy buys cabin on cruise ship. Yeah, and the article was...
That made it into my feed, of course.
Yeah, obviously. That article was very flimsy on details. So we were sort of scrounging around for like, wait, what's going on here? How much does this cost? So I did a bit of research, and I've been studying the brochure for a cruise line called Storylines, STORYLINES, storylines.com. You can check out their like 88-page brochure. And this seems pretty damn cool. So essentially you can either you basically buy an apartment on this cruise ship. You can either buy it outright and own it, or you can put a pretty hefty down payment on it and lease it for 24 years, I believe. They're saying that that's kind of like the, I guess they're like assuming that's going to be like the longevity of the cruise ship. Didn't quite understand the pricing structure. That was not immediately available in the brochure. I'm assuming I have to book a sales call to learn more. But you can get a studio apartment at sea for about $1 million, and they're nice. They're currently they look like architectural renderings, so they're not the actual build yet, which, as we all know, that can be slight departure from reality. But I'm in. Are you in?
I mean, obviously.
Oh, sorry. Important detail. The cruise ship is gonna circumnavigate the world every 3 years, and like the itinerary is crazy. It's like we're gonna go to Istanbul we're gonna park there for 6 days. Then if you're an owner, you get to go in the Storylines app and vote on the next destination that they go to sometimes. So it's like there's a bit of like a loose itinerary, but then the residents get to vote where they want to go next. And by the way, the $1 million apartment is the cheapest one. I think there's like an $8 million duplex with 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms and a grand piano. It looks really sick. But I don't want to live here. I want to rent someone. So you can rent them out, which is cool. So I would love to rent someone's apartment for 3 weeks. I'm going on a 3-week cruise.
A 3-week cruise with Wi-Fi. Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm looking at this $1 million apartment. Looks like it's got a Murphy bed. As well.
That's the cheap one. That's the low end.
It's 237 square feet. So yeah. And there's also commentary about how it's potentially $2,600 a month as a living fee on top of the 1.1 million.
Yeah,
so
it's not cheap.
That might be where they get you.
So I did a little bit of like sleuthing, and basically, a lot of our clients are trying to buy homes in New York City. A lot of our clients are trying to buy 3-bed, 2-bath homes, which is about enough space for a family of 4. And so basically it seemed that it would cost you to get the equivalent of that 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in New York City would cost you about $3 million at sea, and then plus that $2,600 living fee. So it's basically equivalent with New York City is kind of what I came. That was my hot take on this is you could either live in New York City and a crappy 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Crown Heights, or you can fucking live on a cruise ship and see the world in like 5-star luxury, gym, physician on board, all meals. Like, I don't know. I'm into it. Having never been on a cruise, I'm into it.
Oh, that explains your appeal. It totally explains your desire. You, for one, would not survive on a cruise. I know you pretty well. I don't know. I don't know if I've been on a nice.
As long as there's a bathtub, I can live anywhere.
Yeah, there's bathtubs. The world is your bathtub on the Storylines cruise ship.
Looks did you see the in-ocean dock? There's like a dock where you can just like plop off the back like right into the ocean.
Yeah, they just open up the butt of the ship and allow you to go swimming right in the ocean wherever you want. It looks like they'll stop in Venice, Santorini, Istanbul, Kotor. I don't even know where that is. So just randomly going from port to port. Dare I say, I think you called me undateable the other day. Let's say I lived on a cruise ship for 3 years at a time. Do you think this would make me more dateable because at least I own a place? Or would it make me more undateable because I'm roaming the world in a boat?
I'm going to go with more undateable. And by the way, the undateable comment was strictly related to your roving tendencies, not anything else, listeners. So therefore, it would increase. It would increase your undateable factor due to location hopping by about 365x.
How are we doing on time? Should we do?
We are out of time. No, we are out of time, my friend. Why don't you read us out?
Yes, I'm happy to be back. Happy to read us out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Liquidity Event. You can email us at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com. Leave us a voicemail at link in the bio. Show notes are available at brooklynfi.com/episode 76 if you want to read about Shane's new traveling cruise ship that will make him undateable. BKFi stands can leave us a review if they want to be weird about it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, you guys. See you next week.